Hey, what's going on, everybody? I have Brett Nevitt here, covers Florida State for Noles247 in the 247 Sports Network. What's going on, Brett?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate your flexibility, being able to do this. Big series, Miami, Florida State, both teams ranked in the top 25. Both teams on winning streaks. Miami's won the last 5, Florida State 4. Games are going to be there in Tallahassee. Let's talk about, from a Florida State perspective, the importance of this series, and I'll get into some Miami stuff as well. But just, how important is this one for Florida State?
Yeah, well, I mean, more so than anything, it's Miami, Florida State, and obviously that's pretty important. And obviously having Alex Toral too, probably puts a little more emphasis on that. But for us, for hosting possibilities, this is a huge weekend. Probably definitely have to take at least 2 of 3, win the series to still have a chance to host. Probably put it like 40-60 or 50-50 right now for FSU to host. We kind of think there's going to be 5 teams in the ACC, and FSU is probably 6 or 7 right now behind, I think Virginia and Louisville. So this is a big weekend for FSU for hosting. And, I think all 7 of FSU's remaining games this season are quad 1. So some opportunities coming up, but have to execute on them.
Yeah, you touched on hosting. Yeah, 5 teams are currently projected, according to D1 Baseball, in the ACC. Florida State, they said, a team to watch. They're currently the 2 seed, kind of that 2 line. And Miami, they're the 5th national seed, according to latest projections. They're projected to host a regional, but obviously you want to get one of those top 8 bids. So certainly big series for both teams. Miami comes in ranked 6th, Florida State 21st. It's interesting with where they're at also in the ACC. Miami's trying to hold on to the Coastal Division, their 2-game lead over Virginia Tech. Florida State, 2.5 back there at Louisville. I'm curious what you've made of Florida State's in the ACC, the 13-11 in conference play. What have you seen from them throughout the year, but also lately, taking the series at Boston or against Boston College last weekend?
Yeah, so I mean, we've had a lot of ups and downs this year. The big one that really hurt us in ACC standings was getting swept by Notre Dame at home. And, all 3 games we were in, and I mean, the first one we lost 2-0 in extra innings. But yeah, I think that this year the ACC is probably the best it's ever been. And it just feels like everybody's kind of beating up on each other. And that's the way it's been for us too. Like we go to Clemson and we lose there, but then we come back here and we sweep, Louisville. And we also, it's just been a weird year all over the ACC. And, I feel like there's a good top 7 that kind of separate themselves from everybody else. And I would say FSU is probably at the bottom of that 7, or probably 6 or 7 in the ACC. And I think that's exactly where they stand for ACC tournament right now. But yeah, there's a lot of teams that I think are really good in this league and a lot of really good offenses. And it's kind of been weird because FSU probably has the worst offense, but the best arms. So they've kind of had to try to work around that. But yeah, taking the last 2 at BC was a huge necessary for FSU. And it was definitely a bounce back they had to have after dropping the first one there.
You touched on the runs, and obviously that's what stands out to me looking at Florida State from afar. 13th in the ACC runs per game and conference play. Miami's 7th, kind of middle of the pack where they've been. But, like you mentioned, Florida State's first in pitching, first in ERA, a lot of the statistical categories as well, including strikeouts and walks per 9 innings. I want to break all that down. You mentioned Alex Toral. That's a big storyline in this one.
Right.
Played 4 years at Miami, 37 home runs. What have you made of Alex's season? What do you expect from him this weekend? He leads FSU in home runs and RBIs, 231 batting average, 868 OPS. But what have you made of his season? And like I said, what do you expect from him? What do you expect it to be like for him this weekend?
Yeah, so Alex had a really up and down season. He got off to a really good start. I think he had 9 RBIs or something in the first weekend and only had 29 RBIs last year. And then, there was really a whole month in the middle of the year that we didn't get much from Alex, and I had a lot of strikeouts. And it just seemed like everybody was able to throw him a lot of changeups or sliders and just get past him with that. But, the last 10 games or so, Alex has been, back on an upswing. I think he's back up to hitting around 230, and he's only struck out, I think, once in the last 6 games and only 3 times in the last 9 games. So he's seeing the ball a lot better now. And, his power numbers are back up a good bit this year. I think he's got 13 or 12 doubles and 13 homers. And I think he had 7 of each of those last year. It's been good to see him use the right field porch at Hauser. It's just pretty short, but think the big thing for him recently has been like getting back to the opposite field. Alex, I think, has impressed me with his glove this year more than I thought he would, where he doesn't have a ton of range, but he's very good around the bag, and he's helped out our infielders a lot, I think, and, saved us some runs. But I think it'll be an emotional weekend for Alex. I still think he loves Miami. I still think he bleeds green and orange, but, for now he's going to try to help out FSU. And, I know Mike Martin Jr. said he'd probably have a sit down with him on Thursday and talk to him just about keeping his emotions in check and still being able to think, because it's a thinking man's game. But, I think Alex has just been more so than anything really big for the locker room here. He's just seems like a really good kid, and kids kind of gravitate towards him like a coach on the field. So it's been really good to see him kind of take a role like that this year.
Yeah, and I remember talking to him shortly after he made the decision to transfer to Florida State there. Very interesting and interesting situation how it worked out. Miami essentially moved on from him. He would have liked to have stayed, that kind of thing. It was very interesting how all that played out. You touched on his glove. That was one thing at Miami. We saw him. He was he got replaced a lot late in games in the field. Also, we saw him bat towards the bottom of the lineup quite a bit as well, or middle, somewhere in there. So it seems like his roles change. I think it's going to be very interesting. It's not the same as if he was coming down to Miami, but certainly, and he's been on the other side of it. Miami's lost the last 5 games in this series. Florida State won all 4 last year, and everyone kind of remembers that big series where Florida State really poured it on. So interesting that he's going to be. What do you expect, Brett? I know you said coach is going to sit down with him. What do you think he'll do? He obviously is dangerous with the bat.
Yeah, I don't know for sure because Alex probably knows Miami better than anyone, but Miami probably knows Alex better than anyone too. I'm sure they'll throw him a lot of change-ups and breaking balls, especially below the zone. But, if he's able to lay off some of those, I think he can have a good weekend. I'm sure he will be pretty emotional. He has some pretty emotional bat flips and stuff like that at times. But, I think he's supposed to get honored on senior day here too and everything like that. So it'll definitely be interesting. I think it will either go really well for him or Miami might have his number, just depending on how he's able to handle those emotions.
Sticking with the offense, I touched on Miami, middle of the pack, even though they're leading the ACC with 17-7 record. Miami's been picking it up. The 5-game winning streak, they've scored 73 runs during that stretch. And what stands out to me is their top players are hitting really well. Catcher Max Romero, 11-game hit streak, hitting 432, 3 homers, 14 RBIs in that stretch. Morales is really pouring it on. CJ Cavus is doing real well lately and kind of all year. OPS over 1,000 there. What do you make of Florida State's lineup? We touched on the runs, but they did get some runs last week against Boston College. Are you seeing signs, and essentially when it's not going well, what are they not doing? What are they not doing right to score runs?
Yeah, so when it's not going well, it's usually strikeouts and not being able to hit with runners on base. This is an offense that really doesn't have a superstar or much power in it. But when they're able to string hits together, they can be a quality offense. And the thing they preach more so than anything recently is just putting together quality at bats, and that's when they go well, when they kind of make it tough on pitchers. But I think a big key for them is Brett Roberts hitting the ball well, and he's been up in the middle of the pack now in the order. Tennessee Tech transfer Jordan Carrion, our Florida transfer, is usually probably going to be lead off this weekend, depending on Tyler Martin playing or not. He's kind of our energizer bunny at the top of the lineup. We have a couple freshmen, James Tibbs and Jaime Ferrer, that can really hit. They'll probably hit 3-4, both outfielders. Don't know if Tibbs will hit against Palmquist because they don't usually use him lefty, but when those guys are going right, those 2 freshmen and Brett Roberts in the middle of the order, that's usually when FSU's lineup is going at its best. We don't know exactly what we'll have this week. We had a couple guys out earlier this week, a family matter, and then a couple injuries. But it's just been a weird year for our offense. It's mostly transfers and a couple freshmen. So a lot of guys trying to piece it together and get the right approach, more so than anything. They just need to string together quality at bats, like I said. And if they do that, they can be a quality offense, good enough for the pitching staff that they have.
And just to note, you mentioned, kind of player availability, something to watch for on the Miami side is left fielder Edgardo Villegas, who was hit by a pitch against UCF in the third inning and exited the game. He's been their starting left fielder all season long, bats in that 2-hole. So that'll be something to watch for in this series. The series, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 7 o'clock on Friday night on ACC Network Extra, Saturday, 7 o'clock on ACC Network. And then Sunday, I think it's going to be a great treat for people. It's going to be on ESPN2 at noon. Let's get into that Friday night matchup. I think the pitching all along is going to be very interesting in this series. We touched on, FSU lead in the ACC and ERA, strikeout, those kind of things. Miami's second in strikeouts per 9 innings. So we might see a lot of strikeouts in this series if the pitchers are on. But Carson Palmquist on the Miami side, left-hander, can strike out guys, top 25. But Parker Messick leads the nation in strikeouts on the Florida State side. What do you kind of make of Parker, his season that he's had? What makes him so tough to go against?
Yeah, so the thing that makes Parker, so tough more than anything is just his competitiveness. And, he's just a bulldog out on the mound. You kind of always know what you're going to get from him from Florida State's side. But, 4 pitches for strikes, 4 pitches that he can get swing and miss on at any time. Fastball, changeup, curveball, slider. Slider is kind of a new pitch this year where it's more so of a power slider than a sweeping slider. And he pairs it with the curveball. Changeup is probably his best pitch. We'll use that a ton to righties. Fast, uses his 4-seam quality up in the zone and changeup coming off of it below the zone. He just doesn't walk anybody. That really doesn't give it in to anybody. That's the biggest thing with Parker is just how competitive he is, and they preach all the time about how good of a teammate he is too. And just not many people that have a full package like Parker does. And I think it'll be really fun on Friday night against Palmquist. I think those two guys have some history too, know each other a little bit. And, I don't think there's too many better left-handed pitchers in the country than those two arms.
Yeah, both guys touched on the strikeouts. ERA is under 3. Palmquist has been on these last few starts. He's really been clicking. He feels good about it. He says he's not trying to strike out as many guys, really try to get deeper in games has been something he's concentrated on. Home run ball, he's been prone to that. He's given up 11 on the season, something to watch for. I think the Friday night game, as it is essentially all weekend, all season long, is such a big, important game. But I think for these teams in this series, Miami's trying to go on the road. And like I said, in that losing streak to Florida State, in Florida State, like you said, they're trying to win a series. And, I just think this Friday night game is certainly going to be key either way. I think it'll be tough maybe to win the next 2, Saturday, Sunday. Saturday's game, a couple of young guys, Carson Montgomery has been pitching, well at times. And then Miami's got a freshman, kind of the same thing. And Carson Ligon, at times he's pitched well. What do you see from these guys? And it's interesting. Lefties on Friday, righties on Saturday.
Yeah, Carson's an interesting case. Came in last year as kind of the top freshman in the country and just struggled a bit to find consistency. Earlier this year as a midweek starter, he found that consistency, but only a couple weekend starts in. I thought he was much better last weekend at Boston College. Scorer gave him a couple hits that could have been errors that could have changed his line maybe. But, when Carson's right, there's not many people that have better pure stuff than Carson, kind of 94, 95 with the fastball, pair it with, a high 80s cutter and a slider. Sometimes we'll go to a changeup that he likes to use against lefties. The thing with Carson is just command and staying consistent in his mechanics. Sometimes he gets a little too sped up and can lose command out of nowhere and have some big misses. But when his misses are small and he's around the zone, he can be really tough on some hitters. Does give up some hard contact from time to time. But, what they like to do is usually go 5 innings with Carson, and they'll do a piggyback roll with Wyatt Crowell after him, who's a lefty that will be right in that kind of same range, 94, 95 with his fastball with a white bounce slider. Interested to see Ligon. I think I saw him a few times in high school, a couple summers back, and I really liked him. And I know he had a really good start this year. So interested to see how he handles the situation too as a freshman. But yeah, like you mentioned, 2 young arms going after it. I think it should be, another fun atmosphere on 7 o'clock on a Saturday night.
Yeah, and Sunday, Miami going with Alejandro Rosario, very up and down all year long. And kind of lately, they like some things that he showed some signs, but he's really not going deep into games. He's a guy that might get pulled after 3 or 4 innings if things aren't looking well for him. He's a guy who's a Friday night starter. And I asked Coach recently, why have you really been sticking with him? His ERA is up over 7. And he just mentioned, he has a lot of confidence in him. Obviously, that's why he's getting these starts and sticking with him. And he just feels like once it clicks, he's going to be fine. One of these guys that was a highly regarded recruit a few years ago. So they will look to hopefully, get that solidified because, as you know, going into regional play and postseason, you've got to have the starting pitching, multiple guys. You can't just win with one guy or even 2 at times. So Bryce Hubbard for Florida State there on Sunday. What do you make of him?
Yeah, so Bryce was recently pushed back to Sunday after he was sick one week, and they left him there because we had struggled so much on Sundays for such a long time. Bryce can be just as good as Parker when he's on. Was a Cape Cod League pitcher last summer. Bryce had a really good start to the year, then kind of had 5 mediocre weeks where he had a lot of starts that were either he had delays or days changed or stuff like that. It was just really weird, but I thought Bryce looked probably the best he's ever looked last weekend. I think he had 7 shutout innings against BC with 11 Ks, and I know BC's not great, but their hitting isn't usually the reason that they're not good. But just a lot of fastballs for Bryce. Doesn't really throw it too hard, usually 89, 91, but has the fastball qualities to make it an invisible at times, kind of just high spin rate and the way he releases it makes it really tough. And then, he'll also drop in a slider and a curveball, some rare changeups. But the thing for Bryce more so than anything is just keeping his head kind of all in the right place. So sometimes he can kind of almost get too smart for himself and try to be too perfect. But when Bryce just attacks like he did last weekend, he can be a really solid college arm and someone that will probably go top 3 rounds and then will be drafted.
So it should definitely be an interesting series. Another series to pay attention to for both teams is that Louisville at Virginia Tech series over the weekend. 6 games left for teams in the ACC play before the ACC tournament begins May 24th in Charlotte. Brett, your time is very valuable. I appreciate you taking the time to talk. Should be interesting. Take care, man.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me on.